flag in the cafe window have, of course, raised a potential link to Islamic extremism and violence. With me now from Melbourne is Professor Greg Barton, the Director of the Global Terrorism Research Centre at Monash University. Professor, what was that black flag that was held up in the window?
Lee, the black flag was the Shahada, the statement of faith. There is no God but God, and Muhammad is his messenger. It's mainstream for all Muslims. It's the central creed of faith. But in recent decades, it's been used, white letters on black banner, as a call to arms for jihadi groups. And the way it was presented, it looked like the banners we've seen in Syria, Iraq, used by Jabhat al-Nusra. It's not quite the Islamic State banner that has its own distinct logo, but it seemed to be implying a connection with Islamic State.
So therefore, what does that, the use of that flag suggest to us about the gunman?
It suggests that he's responding to that call from Islamic State to carry out attacks where you can with what you have, and to make sure they're videoed, and to make sure you put the black battle banner in the video frame. So he appears to be locating himself as a supporter of Islamic State.
What's the difference between when people would use an Islamic State flag and then this flag? Why would you choose to go with one or the other?
Look, apparently the gunman has been calling for somebody as one of his demands to bring him a proper Islamic State flag. So it appears he didn't have one. They're probably rather hard to come by in Australia at the moment. And so he did the next best thing. He used a banner that suggested an association with a jihadi group. But he clearly seemed to be making that association. The fact that he had hostages pressing their hands against the window, holding this thing up for hours, means it's no accidental reference.
We heard in the story that was on earlier that authorities had feared this type of attack. In your view, is this attack or this incident consistent with the types of attacks that we've seen Islamic State encourage around the world?
It certainly is, Lee. The one new twist, though, is the use of hostage-taking, which is a very worrying development because these things tend to get copied. And the big question that hangs in the air, is this just one of a series of sporadic lone wolf attacks, or is this the beginning of a wave, a cascading wave of lone wolf attacks around the world? And no one knows the answer to that. We have to prepare for the worst scenario.
You say the hostage-taking is unusual. What is the more traditional type of attacks that these sorts of groups are engaged with?
Well, Woolwich is the sort of attack we were bracing ourselves for. A drummer, Lee Rigby, run down with a small hatchback and his throat slit, and all filmed on a phone camera, broadcast around the world, with calls from Islamic State to do that, but have the Islamic State flag present. Apparently that's what Nouman Haider had in mind when he went to Endeavour Hills Police Station back in September, and we saw elements of that in Ottawa and Montreal. That sort of thing we're prepared for. The police train for hostage situations and they're well prepared for them, but this is a worrying development all the same.
Has there been any chatter that you're aware of on Islamist websites claiming any responsibility or ties to this attack or this gunman?
I'm not aware of anything yet, but it's interesting that the Islamic State official electronic magazine, Dubik, in its 5th most recent issue, made direct reference to Nouman Haider's case and claimed that. They also claimed Ottawa and Montreal. And so no doubt we can expect their next issue will be claiming this as well. That's how they leverage these things. They may not orchestrate them centrally, but they're quick to claim credit, and they're hoping that people will follow in copycat fashion.
So there's a degree of opportunism there.
There certainly is. I mean, the Islamic State's very canny about the way they motivate people and the way that they claim credit for what's happening.
The ABC is one of numerous media organisations today contacted by hostages involved in this. Some of them have also, at least one that we're aware of, a woman purporting to be one of the hostages has posted an update on Facebook. What do you make of the degree of communication that's emanating from the hostage centre?
Well, it suggests that the main intent was to get attention and to have media attention. So for this gunman to get his hostages to call various media outlets suggests he desperately wants attention. And of course, that begs the question, should we deny him that? I don't think that's realistic, but the way we frame this discussion is very important. And so far, things have gone well. So
what is the correct way then to frame a discussion like this?
Well, he is trying to act as a hero and say to younger men, look, follow me. This is a great act. See how famous I am. See how much of the world pays attention. And it's good that we've had Muslim community leaders speak out and say, this is not the name of my faith. This is not us. and we've had a fairly neutral tone from the police commissioners, from the premiers, from the Prime Minister. That's the appropriate way to play this. We can't deny it's happened, but let's not make it, not give it any notoriety or regard it as something spectacular.
This is heading towards the 10th hour. What type of options would police be considering to resolve this situation?
Well, the first thing to understand, Lee, is that the police have to prioritise the safety of the hostages. That means they're not telling us the operational details. They have a lot of information which they're not sharing with us quite appropriately at the moment. They're going to prioritise safety, so that means if this thing carries on over midnight into tomorrow, that doesn't matter as long as they're keeping the hostages safe. They're hoping that talking with the gunman and negotiating will lead to some sort of peaceful back down. There are signs that may be possible given he wants this media attention, but they're also preparing for the worst case scenario. But they're not going to rush in. We saw a horrible culmination to another hostage event in Nairobi last year where military rushed in and it was havoc. We're not going to make that mistake here, I don't think.
We know that the National Security Committee of Cabinet held 2 meetings today. What's its role in a situation like this?
Its role ultimately is to be an interface between the security agencies, including the police, and the democratic process. I mean, we had this call in recent months to change counter-terrorism legislation. That's gone through. This same group of people will be asked to consider whatever lessons learned, whether that has to result in new legislation or new allocation of resources. The upping of the terror alert level has given more resources towards this, and that's one of the things that came out of this committee meeting. So it's the interface between the democratic legislator, including with shadow ministers, and the authorities who can't make laws and can't change policy.
Greg Barton, we very much appreciate your time and your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee.